On a charged August night in Ohio, Donald Trump took the stage, his presence electrifying the air. The crowd, a sea of red hats and waving flags, buzzed with anticipation, waiting for the next big promise from the former president. With his trademark confidence, Trump promised to make America strong again, vowing to restore the nation's pride and economic dominance. His words echoed through the crowd, fueling their hopes for a return to what he called American greatness. He quickly turned his focus to China, accusing it of draining America's economic power and undermining American jobs. Trump painted a picture of a nation under siege, warning that China's influence reached deep into the heart of U.S. industries. The crowd listened intently as Trump unveiled his boldest move yet, a sweeping 200% tariff on all Chinese imports of rare earth elements and pharmaceutical ingredients. This was not just another policy, it was a declaration of economic war. On day one, it's going to happen, he declared, framing the tariff as a matter of national security. Trump insisted that America could no longer afford to be dependent on China for critical materials and medicines. The crowd erupted, chanting, "USA, USA!" For them, this was about fighting back, reclaiming control, and showing the world that America would not be pushed around any longer. Trump's message was clear: China is a threat and only he could confront it head-on. He positioned himself as the only leader tough enough to take on Beijing and protect American interests. The tariff became a symbol of that confrontation, a promise to put America first, regardless of the fallout. For Trump and his supporters, it was a line in the sand, a bold stand for sovereignty and economic independence. This rally wasn't just a campaign stop, it was the opening shot in a new, more intense chapter of the U.S. China trade dispute. The world watched as tensions escalated, knowing that the consequences could ripple far beyond America's borders. The proposed tariff targeted the backbone of technology and healthcare, sectors where the U.S. is most vulnerable. American companies already struggling with supply chain issues now faced the prospect of even higher costs and greater uncertainty. The world was left to wonder, how much more intense would this trade war become, and who would ultimately pay the price? As the dust settled on that Ohio night, one thing was clear: the stakes had never been higher for America, China, and the global economy. Rare earth elements, 17 metals with unique properties, are the invisible force behind modern technology. They power everything from smartphones and laptops to electric vehicles and wind turbines. In medicine, they're essential for MRI machines and cancer treatments. Their role in military hardware is critical. Jet engines, missile guidance, and advanced communications all depend on them. A stable supply is a national security priority. Any disruption could cripple defense and tech industries. A sudden shortage or price spike would ripple through the economy, stalling innovation and production. That's why Trump's 200% tariff threat is so significant. It targets materials that underpin America's technological and military edge. The risk isn't just higher prices for gadgets, it's a potential halt to progress. Rare earths are the bedrock of 21st century power. America's rare earth vulnerability is decades in the making. Once a leader, the U.S. ceded ground as China undercut prices and took over the supply chain. By 2024, over 80% of U.S. rare earth imports came from China, which controls nearly 90% of global processing. This gives Beijing enormous leverage, as seen in 2010 when it cut exports to Japan, sending shockwaves through global markets. The dependency extends to pharmaceuticals. Over 90% of U.S. generic drug ingredients originate in China. Any disruption could mean shortages of life-saving medicines. Trump's tariff aims to break this dependency, but rebuilding domestic supply chains is a massive, costly task. The immediate effect? A shock to the system, with manufacturers bracing for impact. The U.S. faces a daunting challenge, regaining control over critical resources. The 200% tariff threat is the latest escalation in a years-long trade war between the world's two largest economies. What began as a series of tit-for-tat measures has now evolved into a high-stakes standoff, with each side determined to protect its interests and assert its power on the global stage. In early 2025, the U.S. imposed a 20% fentanyl tariff and a sweeping 10% baseline tariff on all Chinese imports, citing national security and economic concerns. This move triggered rapid and forceful retaliation from China, which responded with its own set of tariffs targeting key American exports. Tariffs soared to unprecedented levels. U.S. rates on Chinese goods skyrocketed to 145%, while China matched with its own 125% tariffs on American products. The cost of doing business across the Pacific surged, and global supply chains began to feel the strain. Just as economic decoupling seemed inevitable, a surprise truce was brokered in Geneva in May 2025. The agreement rolled tariffs back to a more manageable 10%, offering a temporary lifeline to businesses and calming markets worldwide. The truce, extended through November, provided a brief window of relief for companies on both sides of the Pacific. Yet, beneath the surface, tensions continued to simmer, and uncertainty lingered over the future of trade relations. Average U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods remain high, with some sectors, like electric vehicles, still facing rates above 130%. For many industries, the cost of importing and exporting remains a major challenge. Now, Trump's new 200% tariff proposal signals that the conflict is far from over. The threat of renewed escalation looms large, keeping businesses and investors on edge. The trade war is paused, not resolved. The underlying issues, intellectual property, technology, and market access, remain deeply contentious. Each side is waiting for the next move, carefully watching for any sign of weakness or opportunity. Negotiations are tense, and the atmosphere is thick with anticipation. The stakes are higher than ever, with the global economy caught in the crossfire. Every decision reverberates through markets, affecting jobs, prices, and growth worldwide. The next escalation could come at any moment, and the world is holding its breath, waiting to see what happens next. Tariff uncertainty has left American businesses scrambling. Small companies like Busy Baby, reliant on Chinese manufacturing, face impossible choices: absorb costs or raise prices. For big manufacturers, tariffs disrupt finely tuned supply chains, driving up costs for electric vehicles, wind turbines, and more. Trump's proposed 200% tariff on rare earths could trigger catastrophic price hikes and production delays. Ultimately, consumers pay the price. Tariffs act as a hidden tax, fueling inflation and shrinking purchasing power. Trade between the U.S. and China has plummeted, hurting farmers, manufacturers, and logistics companies. Ports are quieter, and American producers lose access to a massive market. The trade war's cost is felt on every shelf and in every paycheck. The promise to protect American jobs often ends up hurting them. China has matched every U.S. tariff with swift retaliation, refusing to back down in the face of mounting pressure. Each move by Washington is met with a calculated response from Beijing, signaling that China is prepared for a drawn-out economic confrontation. When the U.S. raised tariffs to 125%, China responded in kind, targeting American agriculture and industry. Soybeans, pork, and other key exports were hit hard, putting pressure on U.S. farmers and manufacturers. This tit-for-tat escalation has rippled through global supply chains, affecting businesses and consumers far beyond the two countries. Beijing has also imposed targeted duties, like a 74.9% anti-dumping tax on U.S. industrial plastics, sending a warning to American businesses. These measures are designed not just to retaliate, but to strategically hit sectors where the U.S. is vulnerable, amplifying the impact of each countermeasure. China's most powerful weapon is its control over rare earths. Export restrictions have rattled global markets and U.S. policymakers. These minerals are essential for high-tech industries, from smartphones to military hardware, giving China significant leverage in the ongoing standoff. These restrictions were only eased as part of the Geneva Truce, a temporary pause in hostilities that allowed both sides to regroup. The world watched closely as negotiators tried to find common ground, but underlying tensions remained unresolved. Officially, China calls for dialogue but makes clear it will defend its interests at any cost. Government spokespeople emphasize the need for mutual respect, yet underline that China will not hesitate to act if provoked. This dual approach, negotiation and retaliation, defines China's strategy. By keeping the door open for talks while demonstrating its willingness to retaliate, China aims to maintain both flexibility and strength. The message is clear: China prefers peace, but is ready for a prolonged fight if necessary. Its leaders project calm determination, signaling to the world that they are prepared for whatever comes next. The world is watching as the two giants test each other's resolve. Every new development is scrutinized by governments, investors, and ordinary citizens, all aware that the outcome will shape the global economy for years to come. The economic conflict is as much about power as it is about trade, with both nations vying for influence on the world stage. The stakes are high, and the next moves will determine the future balance of global power. As of late August 2025, the U.S. and China are in a fragile truce. The Geneva deal rolled back tariffs, giving both sides a breather and stabilizing markets ahead of the holiday season. For now, tariffs on most Chinese goods sit at 30%, with even higher rates on items like electric vehicles and semiconductors. The truce is a pause, not a peace treaty. Core disputes remain unresolved. Behind the scenes, negotiations continue on tariffs, tech restrictions, and issues like TikTok and China's ties to Russia. Both sides are using this calm to regroup and strategize. The risk of renewed escalation looms large. The fundamental disagreements that sparked the trade war are still simmering. The truce could unravel at any moment. The trade war has forced the U.S. to confront its reliance on China and invest in alternative supply chains. Bipartisan efforts like the CHIPS and Science Act are funding domestic semiconductor and rare earth production. The U.S. is partnering with allies, Australia, Canada, Japan, to build resilient supply chains. Reopening mines like Mountain Pass is just the start. The real challenge is building the entire processing ecosystem. Environmental regulations and high costs make this a slow, difficult process. Temporary tariff exclusions for some Chinese goods reveal how hard it is to break free quickly. The U.S. strategy is twofold. Pressure China with tariffs while building a lifeboat at home. It's a race against time to reduce vulnerability. For now, dependence on China remains a stubborn reality. As the November deadline nears, the world faces a crossroads. If Trump's 200% tariff is enacted, costs for manufacturers and consumers will soar, risking inflation and supply chain chaos. China could retaliate by restricting rare earth exports or targeting U.S. agriculture and corporations. A tit-for-tat cycle would deepen the divide, damage the global economy, and heighten geopolitical tensions. Yet, the threat of mutual destruction could push both sides toward compromise. A new deal might see the U.S. roll back tariffs in exchange for Chinese reforms on intellectual property and market access. This would require both leaders to prioritize stability over politics. The rare earth showdown has exposed America's core vulnerability. The U.S. will keep pushing to diversify supply chains, a project that will take decades. The outcome will shape the global economy for years to come.